Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast. On this episode, we're talking to new friends of ours, Matt Bowdren and Jake Sorgen.
So Matt and Jake have been working together for a long time in the theater space. Jake is a composer and Matt is an actor-director in the theater space. And they came up with this new project called Small Giants, which is an EP at the moment, but it's spoken poetry accompanied with music, but they're more like scene partners rather than one after the other.
Yeah, so you have both artists being able to kind of communicate via emotion and feeling.
Right, depending on how they felt that day, on how, whatever, how the audience felt that day, how the day actually went, they can really start to get into the emotion, the micro moments, exactly. And so that's what we really spoke about. We spoke about micro moments. We spoke about the EP and exactly what they're trying to accomplish and different ways for them to get that message out and interact with new artists and everything. And, the whole transmedia gauntlet we spoke about of exactly where they are and what they're trying to do. Still very early on, but we're excited about the project. So if you're watching this on YouTube, it's coming right up. Or if you want to listen to this, it's available on all audio channels. So enjoy the show. Well, great. We're in conversation with Matt Bowdren and Jake Sorgen. Matt, Jake, we usually get started with you giving us a little information about, who you guys are and what's the project we're talking about today.
Yeah, well, I'm Matt. I'm an actor and theater director in Chicago.
And I'm Jake. I'm a composer, musician, and writer here in Chicago as well. And our project is called Small Giants. Matt and I have known each other. We've been working together for about 7 years now. We started working together in classical theater, kind of a traditional setup of Matt as an actor, director on projects, and me doing underscoring. So Small Giants kind of comes out of the theater world, but it's its own new project now. Started as a duo between the two of us. We've incorporated some other folks now. And the main focus of Small Giants is that it's a melding of text, of poetry, and music in kind of an improvisational context. And we're this is a culminating project for us, having worked together for so long, and also the beginning of something really new and different in both of our creative lives.
Yeah.
And what was so crazy, or not crazy, what was really interesting is the development of this idea. And, just clarifying a couple of things, it's if you were to listen to that of hearing it's like this poetic, this poetry, spoken word over music, right? It's like, well, isn't that just music? Right? Where you have the lyrics and everything going on. And there's definitely a difference. And I think the clarifying moment when we were speaking early on in our pre-podcast episodes was when you were like, this kind of came up with a Hamlet monologue where you guys were both given a little bit of free range. So how about you guys go dive into that story and exactly how that inspired and started to knock over the domino effect of like, oh, well, you know what? This is kind of different. This is almost like, music and spoken word working together as though they're more scene partners than just already predetermined music with predetermined, not having to deal with like the actual feel of the moment, not interacting with the audience.
And we'll let you get right into that. And I think one of the things that you said that really kind of woke me up was when there were these soliloquies by these very famous actors, well-known actors, very well-respected actors, but the music was so disconnected to what they were saying, and how you guys, and that's really the difference. It's like Frank was saying, they're scene partners. So it's like the music is going to feed off the actor. The actor is actually going to influence and feed off the musician.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, when we, as our sort of creative relationship evolved, what we found was we had moments where, I would be performing something like a set of text or something, and Jake would have composed some underscoring for it. And we found that we were able to kind of really get in sync with each other and really listen to each other, and that the composition and the text was able to sort of meld and merge and change on the night based on how we were feeling, how the audience was feeling, which is a different, I think, approach to music in theater specifically. A lot of times it would be like a set track,
Right.
and then I would act to the track. This,
Right.
because all of our interactions, also Jake always plays live, really allowed us to act like we were two people on stage, right? So like Jake's guitar would serve as another person that I was interacting with, which as an actor, performing by yourself, all you ever want in like a black void is someone to talk to or bounce off of. And I would always find myself a little lost and then hear Jake and be able to kind of hook into that. So that we kind of deepened that, really kind of adjusting and clarifying and trying new things and expanding and contracting those moments to see what we could get away with and change. And then that sort of led into, then I started directing more, and how we could kind of do the same thing compositionally on stage, with using other actors and Jake live. And so, it's been this kind of ongoing movement where we're taking these two elements and trying to equalize them in a sense, find a way where they're not kind of set on top of each other as a piece, but how do they kind of breathe together and change and grow. And that's where the improvisation element comes.
Right.
Like the text is written.
Right.
And there's an idea of some tune playing, or sorry, tune is
Some, nothing from like a Pond 5 or something.
Just like,
just a little ditty,
So, no, elegant.
Not real any thought put into it.
So there is a construct, right? There is a box, and we found a way to sort of play inside those walls and bounce around and change.
What makes Small Giants so interesting to me is that, like you just said, well, like I had mentioned, but you elaborated a little bit more on, it's that scene partner in those like celebrated monologue soliloquies, however, like where there's just so much that rides on that within a play, right? That's, or a musical or whatever, right? It so much rides on it to tell the continuation of the story, to get into the psyche of that character. But really you don't have anybody else on stage with you to kind of play off of, which is kind of a detriment because, depending on the day in your real life, right? And how it is outside, what the audience is kind of acting like and everything, there's not much room to move if the music is just one right after the other, right? It doesn't allow the actor or actress to then pivot and really embellish certain things. It's like, no, I got to say this the same way. It's like a machine. We got to keep on going on this same kind of way. It doesn't really allow them to play off of each other, which I think is really interesting that kind of spawned off this idea of spoken word poetry coupled with music that, once again, isn't going to be a track. It's going to be live. It'll be how and what everybody's feeling at that moment, and allowing for discoveries to be made throughout the live process.
And, one of the things that we would do, just, messing around with some of our films, is that when we would put in a scene, we would change this track of music every time we would do the scene. And you would be amazed at how much that changes your interpretation of a scene based on what music is playing. So the fact that, and not to say that, well, not all of them worked, but they all kind of told you a different truth. There's a different thing that happened. And so having the music actually, be a part of the scene in terms of something that can change and something that can, evolve, kind of keeps both parties kind of on their toes, like almost like, ooh, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. And if you're going to hit this chord, I don't know, music lingo.
And I think oh, sorry.
Yeah, right.
Right. And one thing that I think is really important in the way this had evolved too, in the way that I don't think we're not making like a traditional theater, is that we got really interested in like, okay, how do we step away from, the example of Hamlet or a soliloquy? It has a narrative structure. Like you've sat and you've watched and you've listened and you have this story to kind of pull you along and get you emotionally invested. How can we now, like the poetry we're using for this Small Giants EP is non-narrative. There really isn't a narrative to follow. It's more soundscape with words. And I think so how we're sort of investigating, how can we create that same moment of catharsis or nostalgia or whatever we're going for without the structure of a narrative.
Right.
It's something I was really jealous of Jake our whole time working together, that I work really hard for 2.5 hours to get audiences to the moment of, and Jake plays a ditty. And the second, really, but a chord can affect you in a way in a second that
there's a great Philip Glass quote that I love about this, where he says, if you turn your TV on and mute the sound and put on I'm forgetting how this goes. So you turn the TV on, mute the sound, put on one thing and keep changing the music, turn on some music in the background and keep changing it. It's so disconnected. It's so disjointed. You have no idea what's going on. You flip that, you put on one piece of music and just rapidly change the channels, and it's a movie. You've got a whole story there. And I think that's an interesting, the narrative, not that there is a narrative, but any kind of through line coming not from the text is a guiding principle, through this, which I think is there, but not talked about or understood enough.
Right.
In this work. And, that's kind of, I was just watching the other day, yesterday, it was a Nova special about the senses and how, even though we're so much more visually oriented, the ears actually kind of tie a lot of things together, which is kind of weird. Even though 80% of our senses happen through the eyes, we don't usually trust them all the time. So it's kind of weird how the ears actually do kind of, I don't know what they said. It's like it fills the space. So it's it tells that all these are just disconnected images, and the sound is what kind of goes through and makes them feel real. And so what you just said there, we'll find a through line if we can hear it. If we can't hear it, then
even just what you said there. So the narrative isn't coming from the actual, like they said, they do have an EP that I don't know if everybody has it. We have it, but that has
not yet.
Not everybody has it. So don't look for it. Not until we tell you to. But like you said, the poetry itself isn't. There's no through narrative there, but musically, it's all going to be coming from the same guy, kind of going through musically, and that could be that through line, and it kind of almost encompasses that the way the world really is, right? You'll have in any given block a whole bunch of different emotions going through a different amount of people, and maybe that's that kind of connection that allows you to oh man, I'm losing my train of thought as I'm thinking, but it allows you to have some sort of cohesiveness, but then not having it need to be character in song one is character in song one.
It's not necessarily about something. Right.
Right. No, but you know what? I think what Frank's getting to is that it's going to be different for everyone. Because everyone's going to be able to take different moments, and that different through line is going to mean different things for everyone. So the story, and it's almost like the story that because that's the one thing I think Carl Jung said. It's everyone can innately follow a story, but not everyone can tell one. But everyone can innately follow it. And so, especially when there's no words that everyone understands as a singularity, it'll be different for everyone who follows that story.
And I think in that way, it's different for everyone, and then for everyone. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I think there's a way it can speak to anyone. In that it's just experiential in that moment.
Right.
And we talked in one of our meetings too with you guys about thinking of it more like a concert, right? Like you go to a Rolling Stones show and you're both seeing one event, 2.5 hour event of the concert, but they play Moonlight Mile and then they play Jumpin' Jack Flash and then they play Brown Sugar, and those songs have nothing to do with each other. They're not connected, and each person has a favorite moment of the concert that's different, but you're also experiencing one event, one musical event in that time,
Right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Right. And I think what you're saying too, it's for no one, but it's for everyone, or it's for everyone and it's for a 4-year-old will get a different story than the 60-year-old will, but they'll both be at the same place,
Right.
And there isn't, you didn't get that part. There isn't going to be that because there's no story.
You didn't see that he was.
We have no clue.
Right.
And that's like what part of this is what's kind of fun for us to be making right now too, is like for us, this is all process. We don't, this EP, there was no end goal. There really was no like, this is what we want to say. It was just like, we like messing around with Jake playing music and me speaking out loud. And so like, it's a really kind of joyful way to create some art. And in my experience, approaching projects with joy is like the best work. Once it becomes work, I am bad at it. so like it's all that kind of like fun process.
Yeah.
And then, so then the next kind of extension is like, okay, what does this look like live? And what does it look like visually? And how do we keep these same principles of equalizing these different modes of creation and this kind of improvisational, joyful process? How do we add that with film? How do we do that with still images, whatever we're going to add next? So
and just to go back to what Jack was saying about what we've all been saying basically about how everybody's going to have their own interpretation of it. What's really interesting, what you guys have been kind of doing with taking giving somebody a certain song from, or not song, but a certain track from the EP to a filmmaker, to an artist meaning a painter or there have you, or to and I don't know if you guys have done it, to a photographer, that as they're listening to it, they interpret what they're hearing onto their own medium, which is extremely interesting because it almost not personifies, but it's exemplifies the idea that like everybody's going to interpret this differently, right? Everybody's going to take something else out from it, and it's not necessarily going to be the same thing from artist to artist, audience member to audience member, whereas you could really get kind of interesting takes on it and actually influence people that hear it the first time. They have their own interpretation of it. Then they go and they watch like a music video type thing, right? Where you then see like, oh, they're taking it in this direction. I didn't even think about that. And it's like the endless replayability of it, where you can constantly re-experience it, track, the EP, over and over again.
And also, I think what we were getting at a little bit last time was that, the same thing can be interpreted differently by two different scene partners. So like a different musician and a different actor can take it in different directions. And we were talking about if this, hopefully, you guys start a huge trend and everyone gets involved with it. And one day, Nick Cage and I don't know, what some random
Yo-Yo Ma
decide to do the EP, redo the EP.
Oh my God.
There's no doubt in my mind that will happen.
Nick Cage and Yo-Yo Ma are always taking their work.
It's constant.
Right. There
if
you
I
go.
get one more call from Yo-Yo about I'm doing this, it's enough already,
Right, but that could be, just what would they come up with? Who the hell knows,
Yeah, and I think that's one of the exciting things. Like we've tried so far, like little proof of concept videos. We have a friend working on like a film version of whatever. We gave it to a friend in New York who painted to it, and that was filmed. And so kind of like what are ways that we take this base material
Mhm.
and with the instruction of like play and improvise and just create off and see what, it's like a game of telephone, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. That's a good way of thinking about it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and like, so as we maybe bring more people in, like, how do we keep playing that game?
There may be elements that we get sent back that resonate with us personally more than others, but I don't think there's no wrong answer. No one's going to make a piece that I imagine we would look at and say like, you missed it. That's not possible with this work.
I mean, you could. I mean, it would kind of go against the whole ethos of the project, but you could say it because you did start it. So it's like, this isn't Little Giants.
You could, like, one of the things, one of the kind of principles and yeah, that's okay, in making it that we like is this non-narrative idea. Like, it's really easy when you put two people on stage playing, especially if one of them is an actor speaking and one of them is playing guitar, to make it narrative all of a sudden, right?
Right.
It's very easy to do that accidentally, right?
Right.
If you enter a space in a way and perform it in a way, I mean, it can look, you can manipulate it like that. So kind of keeping that principle of, so I guess in a way we do know some rules.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's interesting and we obviously we spoke about transmedia, and we were trying to, through our pre-podcast talk about, exactly how we can get this to expand and to go, to become have a little bit more steam behind it, to allow you guys to go out and do, like, if you guys were to decide to go do the traveling circus idea.
I'm not saying I'm letting it go.
I think
weird pause there for a joke that came from the pre-podcast. Nobody in the audience is going to be like, "What the hell was that? What was that pause there?"
The joke is, I want to make a circus, and Jake thinks it's a dumb idea.
I think we've met in the middle of like it's a Rolling Thunder review style.
Yeah, right.
He's humored me as long as possible.
Right, but to allow this idea to exist across different mediums. But one of the main things about transmedia surrounding an idea or surrounding a particular project is that there has to be some sort of cohesiveness between them, right? Where you guys are literally controlling and having the reins to it, right? Which sounds really stupid, seeing we just said give people creative flexibility, but you want to give everybody creative flexibility, give people flexibility to allow them to have their own interpretations, but then also on the other side, which is a little bit more structural, that creatives tend to, let's not have to deal with that all that much, is like, how exactly are you guys going to connect the painting to the EP, to the music video, and how to then, make that like, hey, listen, this is all the same stuff. And you could participate too. Like, we're looking for you to tag us in, I don't know, like an Instagram post with something that you did. Maybe you were doing a dance to the whole thing, right? Which I think we spoke about as well. Very much like a interpretive type of dance with, maybe with a hula hoop that we always see at yoga on the beach, right? Something like that, where it's like, whoa, like you can have all those things working together. The question is like how to combine all that together so everybody knows that it's a part of this same project. And if you can show that it's a part of the same project, that'll make more people, like, people that just heard about it, like us, not just heard about it, it's been like a month now, right? To people that, like you said, your friends and your family that are in total support of you are going to be like, you know what? I was a little nervous about doing something like that. Maybe I didn't think I was going to be that talented to cook to it, or make up this, whatever, like something to it, or that make the dish, make the cocktail from stipulations. Oh, there you go, right? Right, like it allows it, once you have a little bit of momentum behind it, when you have people coming out with content consistently, which is going to be very heavily on your side in the beginning, you can start to chip away at audience members that are kind of curious to do it, to allow them to do it. And all of a sudden you can really start to get that momentum.
And I also think that, there's always, like, especially in creative, and we had spoken on what's his name? Garrett Spatz. He was on the podcast and we talked about how limitations actually help creativities. And a way to think about it too is like, there are like billions of things you can do in the world, and we're all bound by the same laws of physics. So by putting in those rules does not mean that, you know, it's like, oh, it's going to stifle creativity. No, it's going to make someone be like, oh, wait, I could get around this rule if I do this. You know, this technically is still what we're doing, but I'm just interpreting it in a different way. So actually having rules, like you guys were saying, like there really isn't any rules, and then all of a sudden you said, well, actually that is one of the rules.
Yeah,
It can't be that. Like having those like core principles, like, you know, don't make them like boom, unable to move, but like having a couple of those things can actually be useful as a template to how to create more stuff like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's interesting because, you know, not only can, you know, like you said, you guys already had this stuff in the works, which is fantastic, right? And it's like, okay, well, yeah, it's all about kind of trying to invite more people into doing it. And by doing so, you know, like inviting more people and actually showing off what people are coming up with can really start to make people go like, wow, you know what? What's interesting about this whole thing is that, you know, it's poetry. Like, you know, this one track on the EP really spoke to me. And now I saw one that really didn't speak to me. Like I didn't really understand it. It wasn't my favorite. You know, everybody has that on a back to a concert or something like that. I'm like, oh God, they're playing this song. I'm going to go to the concessions, right? But after seeing what this person did with, you know, once again, let's go back to hula hoop dancing people, right? I was like, wow, you know what? I kind of get it now. I kind of get it. I want to understand. I'm starting to see it through that lens. And it's such an opportunity to expand the message, which is like the biggest part right now, especially for Small Giants, where it is now. I mean, number one, you guys are going to have to show up, or not show up, but let people listen to it.
Yeah, we got to release it.
You know, you guys got to release it. That's the number one thing. But even what you're doing, where you're kind of holding it close to your chest, and you're having some people already play around with it a little bit. Having all that stuff happen at the same time is going to allow people to be like, oh, they're looking for this. They're looking for people to come aboard. And that'll help influence the next one, the next EP, with maybe different writers, different musicians and everything.
Yeah.
You know?
And again, I want to, like, our goal is definitely not to, like, just collect a band of artists. Like, we want to, like, take this EP and release it and then have, like, a live show version. The proof of concept is, like, we just don't really know right now what that is. You know? Yeah.
I think, you know, we'll let you guys know, and hopefully you can help us get that word. I think we're looking at like an early July release to have that out into the world and kind of move full steam ahead through the summer into the fall with this.
Yeah. Right. And what we were talking about a whole bunch of different ways of actually trying to activate the audience around what really is kind of a new genre, which we were talking about. I mean, it's definitely not something that, you know, I guess isn't mainstream. It's not something that you see very often. However, you guys were mentioning many people that do have some sort of notoriety in the realm of like, oh, they're a musician and they're already a captivated audience. They're at the concerts. Like, what are you going to do? Run away? Like, you're going to listen to this kind of stuff. That are doing that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Hey, and there's a real thing with a captivated audience, right? I mean, we can go back to the one time that we, like a project that we did for the Ensemble Espanol Spanish Dance Theater, which was, they had a gala and they wanted like a gala video that ended up being like 2.5 minutes long or something like that. And everybody absolutely adored it, right? You get applause at the end. And he's like, oh, we got to put this up on the internet. We got to, you know, send this out to our donors and stuff. I'm like, yeah, but you got to understand that was a captivated audience. That was, where else were they going to go? They were already sitting there. They already paid to sit there. Oh, something's on the screen. The lights are too dark to do anything else, right? Like, you're going to watch it, right? Yeah. And that's one of the things. But anyways, going back to those concert goers that are kind of trapped at these artists that want to experiment a little bit with spoken word poetry with music accompanying them. There are people out there that are kind of doing that. And I'm sure that there are plenty of different theaters that, even if it's like an intermission type thing, you know, of like, hey, intermission, you can go off and do whatever. But this is something that, you know, is coming out that we're working on that that would be, it's kind of like an intermission type play until you could start getting a lot of buzz around it. Not a lot of buzz, but just start to build up people's appetites for more of that, right? And I mean, my mind went into jam sessions, jazz jam sessions type things where they already have the poetry slam type of structure already, where you could really start to expand out and see and test out where that audience actually is, because that's going to be kind of the challenging part of well, where do they live? Who are these people that want to listen to this? Because we know there are, but we don't know where they are.
Yeah, and I, there are many great traditions of this. Like, we are neither inventing or even reinventing the wheel of the form. There are huge, mostly non-Eurocentric musical traditions and poetry traditions that are oral, that are interdisciplinary. I think what you are coming to Small Giants for is a particular way that we do this, more than like we're claiming to have discovered that sounds and words go well together. But that we have an approach to it that feels authentic, and
sure.
For me as an audience member, that's something that I'm always drawn to. And it's a discussion I have mostly with theater people who are very into like, it has to be for the audience. And for me, it's like, I'd like to be entertained, of course. I'd like to be carried through an event, but I love watching someone be authentically them on stage and just watch them work out whatever they're dealing with. And it doesn't have to be for me to entertain me. And I think that's certainly a guiding thing here of like, there seems to be something interesting about the way we work together, whether or not this line of poetry hits you in the heart or not. There's something happening that feels worth taking a minute and looking at.
Yeah. No, it seems like you said, it is going to be about you guys doing it, especially early on, right? I mean, we can go off on futuristic thoughts of like how to expand it, which of course is the way that my brain's kind of orientated. But like coming to, like you said, like there's a thirst for it, and it's got to come down to, them. For me, from like we're not non-theater people. We do go to the theater every so often.
I wouldn't necessarily call us theater people.
Well, you gotta have money to be a theater person, right?
So
you gotta be able to go.
I mean, theater people, I think, are people that are in the theater. So like people are actors. I think theater. I mean, would you a theater
pretentious theater people?
But as a theater person, someone that goes to the theater or someone that's involved in theater?
I think it could be used either way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just thinking theater people. I'm like, no, we're not like backstage, warming up our voices.
I don't think in my head, whatever this live version of the EP is, or a continuation of, I don't know if it belongs in like a traditional theater.
Right.
I think it belongs more in like a nightclub, like small
very much.
stage.
Yeah, very much like
I think a traditional theater space would be.
Oh yeah.
But I don't. Yeah.
I think being in a space like that would tell the audience a lot. It would put a lot of messaging on top of what this is going to be already. And I think maybe not being in that space allows us more freedom to say it's not necessarily that.
It could be in a gallery, or something like that.
Right.
Gallery's a great one.
Because like people come to the theater with certain expectations, like when
they expect to be told a story, right?
Right. And I think that when I was even talking, it's definitely a much more intimate thing. Like you have these two people on stage that, I mean, you don't want a huge freaking stage unless that's the point, Unless that's the point of the piece is like, oh, well, the stage has a part to it. No, you need something smaller, more intimate.
Yeah.
And I really think when people right now are going back to, live performances, that's really kind of what they want. They want something smaller and intimate. They don't necessarily want something so.
And as a theater maker and audience member, I prefer watching and creating anything. I mean, 100 people in a room is more than enough, right? That's good work. You can really see people working and experiencing something, which I think, so intimate is really important.
Yeah, well, here's a question for you though. So we mentioned a gallery, and even like I feel like an intimate type of thing, it would be at a green mill or something like that, where it's very small. But the question then becomes, is it that it has to be totally paying attention to small giants, or would it be more of a open floor plan? You could sit down and you could really listen, or do you want all the attention on you? Because at a gallery, to me personally, that seems very much more like, the entertainment's over there.
Yeah,
we're over here, Frank, looking at whatever.
All the attention.
Yeah, of course.
I have a problem. No, I think that's an interesting question. I think it would be a neat. I think we'd have to try it both ways. Like, is it something you sit and watch, or is it when we bring collaborators and we have someone painting? Is it something like an event space you walk through and can kind of experience these little pieces, and maybe you relate to something more and gravitate towards it?
Yeah, right. It's like almost like not a display. It's like a collection. It's a collection of work. If you couldn't possibly do it at a theater, because you need to have an area for the painters so that people can migrate towards it, right?
Yeah,
it's like this person's painting. You have like a little, I don't know, not a plaque like they're a museum piece or something like that, but something that says like they're painting to what's being spoken. So to understand what's going on here,
like micro moments too. I mean, the EP is what, 20 minutes?
20, 25 minutes.
Talking about like a piece of composed theater that's 45 seconds to 2 minutes, right? Like, here's your sit down for 2 hours, have your break, which I think is probably, at least coming out of the pandemic, my attention span anyway, like what people have. And so, these like micro moments would really lend itself to something like that that's movable.
Yeah. Well, I love the word micro moments. I definitely have it written down on my little pad here. That micro moment, it's not even just for the audience, it's for you guys too, of being able to, while you're playing, while you're speaking, to have those micro moments with each other, and then letting that resonate throughout the audience. So maybe it is kind of like a, I don't know, like my mind's going crazy. I mean, I love the idea of having those different mediums there for this circus, where you have all these different things that are kind of happening that you can experience all of them, not simultaneously, but you can migrate towards one or the other. Like I was thinking even like, maybe one of the tracks is literally just the short film that is made from it. But then again, you don't want to, if you're paying for tickets and everything, then you have that whole problem of like, well, you got to pay the guy if you're going to use this short film to actually use it on, whatever. But it would be interesting to have that real media mix, which would be transmedia on steroids, because you'd be able to do all of it at the same time. Like you could choose where you wanted to migrate, whether that was sitting down and actually listening, whether that's watching the artist go to town on, whatever, probably a canvas, or whatever, however else, because there's a million different mediums that you could do depending on even the space, like the Botanical Gardens has an open kitchen. That would be kind of cool. Very intimate setting. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but up north, whatever that is, in Chicago. It's really, actually, that would be really, really cool to see, because it's, like I said, the seats and everything are very small, but then it would allow for like more of a cooking type thing, was what I was getting at, to go along with the actual track that you guys are playing. So there's a whole bunch of different avenues to go down. And I think it was really interesting what you said too about the theater people, how you don't want it to be at a theater because you don't want people to have the expectation of there being a narrative.
Right.
That's interesting to me, because that you don't want people to go in there with a preconceived notion of what they're going to hear, or what's to be expected, and then in turn miss the point of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's we also on the recording, we worked with this amazing Chicago-based actor named Brenna DeStasio. And there's a track that we decided Matt wouldn't be on, so it's just Brenna and I. And I find that piece just incredibly virtuosic of what Brenna's doing. And every time I listen to it, I'm like moved hearing it. But each consecutive time I listen to it, I'm thinking less and less and less about what the words actually are. And it, now that I've heard it so many times, when I hear it, I'm really not even hearing any logic in the language. It's just like listening to Brenna do this amazing thing. And I think like that's a goal, you know, for the whole evening, right? Is like that's where we'd love to bring people to, that you catch what you catch in the logic. You know, it's not nonsense. I mean, the words are, you know, written for a reason. But, you know, that doesn't need to be the goal of like, wait, I lost the thread. Who's she talking about? Are they a couple? Are they fighting? What, you know, it's like, just let it happen. And, you know, for us, at least, like we feel something, and I think the audience would too, you know? Right.
Yeah. Right. Well, what they catch. And then that's what impacts them the most. And it almost sounds like you're hinting towards and we've kind of already hinted towards it. It's like the whole experience of the evening, right? It's not just the, you know, it's, and I feel, and I mentioned this in our pre-podcast, I feel like theater and musicals and, you know, orchestras and anything that's a performative art, that they miss that a lot, is that it's not just about the piece itself. It's the whole evening, right? It's going, it's, you know, what you do after. It really is. It encompasses the whole thing. Not that you can really control what people do. And I guess in pamphlets in theaters, they do try to, well, that's more advertising of like, hey, you know, you get $20 off a steak over here, you know? But it really is that whole evening. And really what you can manage to do at like, when this happens to be in a performative, you know, live situation, is have that so that it is a whole experience. And how that whole thing gets structured, and whether or not, you know, everything's happening at the same time, or if, you know, everything's happening very, very sporadically, to have somebody have a whole experience of, you know, these micro moments.
Yeah. And I think speaking to that, to the whole experience, and another big reason why, not that we wouldn't do this in a theater, but why that's not the driving goal, is the relationship of the audience to us as performers. And I think Matt and I are both not super into the relationship where there's an audience and we're kind of kept away until showtime. I think like in a gallery setting, the idea would be like, we're all there. We're all like milling about. We're having a glass of wine with everyone. And then Matt and I kind of move towards the corner where we have everything set up and begin, you know, and it is this like, if it's this experience rather than you're sitting and waiting while the artists prepare, you know, it's like we're all in this together, and now we'd like to share this with you, you know?
Yeah, no, I love that idea, because that really is an interactive, more of what you would expect, or what you, I mean, for an intermission at like, you know, the CSO, right? Like, what do you got? You got like 10 minutes or something like that to like run and do everything. And you can't really mingle with anybody and talk to the people that are there. Or, once again, feel like you're a part of something. Because when the lights go off and you're sitting in your chair, it's literally just you and maybe the person sitting next to you that you realize are actually there. You know, like that. I love that idea of you guys just being like in the middle. And, you know, Matt, you could probably have the microphone in your pocket too. Like, Jake could just kind of, right. And you could just be like in the middle of something, like, all right, I got to stop.
Yeah, I got to go now. Yeah.
You know, and you could be right in the middle of everybody, you know, feeding off of exactly what's going on. So that's a really, really interesting way of going about it. I mean, obviously right now it exists in, you know, on an EP, it exists in a digital form, but, you know, it's going to come down to, you know, whether or not you can, where you can find a space to actually do it. And then, by the way, let us know so we can come, you know, where you can actually do it. And then having some, you know, like, I don't know, like, I love the painter being there while you guys are performing. I love that. You know, like I think that would be really, really cool, very unique outside of, you know, somebody just playing, you know, whatever classical music on a piano and a cello there,
Right.
where it's a little bit more interactive. Yeah, one of the last things that we wanted to bring up, which, you know, is all about audio storytelling, is Clubhouse, which is another avenue that we can go down here too, where all the discussion will be happening interchangeably, of course. Like you don't have to pick one and then just stick with it, right? Where you can do the EP that's going to be the same every single time because that's the way that those work, right? They're published, right? And then you can have the live stuff with like different artists, but then you can also do it on Clubhouse where people can chime in, right? And the audience is a little bit more interactive, but that could span over continents, right? Where the audience could be from anywhere being there to experience, you know, whatever. It could be, you know, like the Clubhouse version can be, it doesn't have to be the EP, it could be you guys practicing and doing, you know, experimenting with different stuff.
Open rehearsals and
it's a fun.
you know, that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think whether it's Clubhouse or a different platform, you know, the huge boom of audio storytelling right now is certainly helpful for a project like this.
Right.
And you know, like we talked about podcasts and live podcasts, also known as radio. You know, it's been around forever, and yet is having a really interesting moment, you know, over the last 10 years and seems to keep going. It certainly doesn't seem like a fad. You know, it's just since the podcast boom, it's just been increasing, Clubhouse being one of the newest avenues for it. But I think given what we're doing, there is a lot to be explored in the audio storytelling landscape. And I think a lot of possibilities for us to get in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we're really excited about the project because, like I said, I think the gallery idea. I think did we settle on the gallery idea? I think we settled on the gallery.
I like it. Cool.
Yeah. You just got to pitch a tent of some sort outside, very colorful,
right?
So that everyone knows it's a circus.
Okay.
Or you put it inside of the gallery, and everyone's like, "What are we inside of this gallery for? If we're inside of a tent." You know, I mean, you know, this, and like you said, like you guys aren't reinventing the wheel here. I mean, this is oral storytelling with music accompaniment. I mean, that's all the way back to tribal stuff, right? Like you got some guy banging on a log and, you know, fires going and everything, which would be another cool kind of place for it to exist as well. The traveling circus is definitely could be a loose theme of like, hey, you know what, we're at a gallery today, but next week we're going to be, you know, out in, you know, Starved Rock or something like that. And then the next week after that, we're just picking up and ponying around to all these cool locations where stories were told before or something. And then, like you said, the rehearsals on Clubhouse would be really cool for people to pop their head in. If not on Clubhouse and on Twitch, if you want a video version of it as well, where people can actually see you and interact with you. But yeah, there's a ton of stuff that can happen. That's a ton of work. It's a ton of work. And it's like this level of you know, storytelling it's so much coordination and it's so much of effort and passion that, you know what, if you're creative, you already have it, right? You're already going to be willing to put in all that work and extra time and extra hours into it. So, you know, yeah, excited to see where it goes and where it's going to pop up, what you guys actually settle on, right? Because it'll be interesting.
Yeah. And these conversations are super helpful just because we're lucky. We're at a point where I feel like how we like to work is pretty established and figured out. The first product or piece is made
there.
So now like we're just trying to figure out, how do, you know, do we just release it, or is it like, do we build a package? Is a live show figured out? And then we, you know, so we're just having those brainstorming, and these conversations really help.
Right. And the great part too is that regardless of what direction you take, if I think releasing it and then getting feedback, and then also, you know, petering out the painting and the short film and whatever else you can get people to do while listening to it, is going to help build up some sort of like, wow, you know what, this is interesting, and then saying like, hey, live, all that stuff happens. You could be there, right?
Yeah.
It's not digital. It's like you could be there while the person is cooking something that he named after the the track that we play at 10:50. Like there, it can have that whole avenue to it, and you can get a lot of creatives on board. And that's another thing too, just trying to go out and to whatever those communities and try to find more and more collaborators to jump in. And with every collaborator comes a different audience too. That's like, just like what you said, like people like you guys, like your work, and just like that painter, people like their work, and just like the filmmaker, people like their work. And it's like, what new project are you working on? Oh, holy cow, look at all this other cool stuff that I can interact with. Which will be huge, because then you won't get them all, right? But you'll be able to get one or two here, one or two there. And then that's the way that like a virus, too soon, it expands through amongst people.
A little too soon. Still around. I mean, his kid's still not in real school yet.
That's right. Well, I
was going to say like a spider's web.
Like a spider's web, sure.
Yeah.
Spider's web, there you go. Right, but people are afraid of spiders.
Yeah, but not as much as they are the virus.
I don't know. Have you seen the news lately? It doesn't seem like many people are afraid of it anymore. Did it go away? Was Trump right? Did it just disappear? So this has been great. We usually end off with you guys giving us your best pitch for somebody to, let's just assume that it's going to be the EP release. It seems like that's going to be the most logical first step. Your best pitch, and I think you guys can go into, what to expect from it, and what you hope they get out of it, and hopefully what that inspires them to do, because like you said, you want as many other media stuff. If you didn't notice, Jack does paint. That's his.
Oh yeah, I painted that. Yeah.
So
in the corner over there, it's slightly askew.
It is slightly askew. Oh, the whole podcast was slightly askew. Oh no, it's on the nail wrong. But like even having Jack do something like that and all that other stuff. So exactly what you want these people to be able to get out of the project and stuff. But I'll stop talking, and I want a pitch from each of you. So don't try to combine it separate. Let's see if there's any common thread between you two.
Yeah, right. Because this is also scene partners right now.
Yeah,
what do you guys both think about the project? All right, so now one of you guys plug your ears so you can't hear. Actually, leave the room. Leave the room.
No.
So what pitch for the EP? Yeah, we have a collection of poetry and composition that we've put together that we think creates insightful, nostalgic, and thoughtful micro moments for you to listen to. Your turn.
Nice. You took all the good words. I mean, my instinct is as in everything in my life, to go a little left of center and say, our pitch is this 25-minute EP that I think, come to it and see where it leads you from there. But as a pitch for that piece, that project itself, I would say that it's a project that is both very rooted in things that you're familiar with, language, music, poetry in rhythm, spoken word, and also very new at the same time. It's different. It's certainly different for us as artists, but the small feedback we've gotten so far is that it seems to feel differently for listeners too. It's not something that's easily defined, and the pitch, the call to action is help us define it, listen to it and see what it is for you, because that is a crucial part of what it's going to be for us.
Yeah. Now, Jake, I thought you were the composer and Matt was the actor or speaker.
Just here to catch Jack.
No, that was brilliant, because I love what you said about, it's really help you guys define what it is, because that's literally, once again, that is the basis of all transmedia story world project is like, we have this idea. Like you said, you're comfortable with the way that you guys are working now. Now it's time for you guys to put it out to the world, scariest thing on the planet, to see how the audience is going to interact with it and what it means to them. And ultimately, then that's what it means to you, right? Because that's the way that in any theater, anything, right? It's all about how you're interacting with your audience and what it means to them. And then you can then find even more meaning into what you do. And that helps influence everything from a business structure to a creative structure of exactly what it looks like going forward. We're excited. Like I said, you just let us know where it is, and we'll buy tickets and we will show up. And we'll even bring the camera, and we'll do a little bit like a behind the scenes thing. So we like getting behind the scenes before everybody else shows up too. So we'll be there a little early, so long as we're allowed to. We'll help you set up and everything. But like, you know, to kind of see like the actual, right, the revival of everything, the living version of it, and seeing where it goes, and hopefully it'll be in the hands of many people and influencing many people in the near future.
Yep. And
That would be nice. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Right. And Yo-Yo Ma and Nick Cage.
Yo-Yo Ma is going to come for it.
They'll probably buy tickets too.
They'll be.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right.
They're gonna fight.
They get sent to they get sent to a different website to buy the tickets. They don't buy it on Eventbrite. It's like whatever bougie Eventbrite. It's like 3-5 times more expensive, on top of a price hike. Yeah, and I don't like literally like Nick Cage. Geez, like you notice that Jake's never mentioned Nick Cage. He's always talking about Yo-Yo Ma. Like he does not want Nick Cage involved in this, and you shouldn't.
I'm sure he's fine.
Yeah. It's got to show.
No.
us up, you know?
No.
I feel like
He is going to take it.
track from the project.
No, he is going to take it in. What was that recent thing with Seth Rogen saying that Nick Cage came into audition for the Green Hornet villain, and Nick Cage came in doing like a white Jamaican accent and didn't read anything from the script and just was like did his own thing. And Seth was like, yeah, he seemed like he wanted us all to get up and applaud what he did, and when we all looked stunned, like he shut down. Right? It's like, well, because nobody expected you to go in there and do that. If you're going to have Nick Cage be in anything, right? And we have a project that we need Nick Cage in, right? You have to let Nick Cage be Nick Cage.
Right.
That means, very much like with the audience, we don't know what he's going to do. But we have to accept it and morph ourselves to match it. Because the best Nick Cage movies, which we do Nick Cage marathons often, are the ones that he's allowed to be a little unhinged. You just got to know it. And that's when he's the best at what he does.
We don't have a lot of rules for Small Giants, but that's against the rules. For sure. Cage doing a white Jamaican accent is against
That's against the rules. Hey, you know what? When we walk into the gallery, it better have like a little.
That rule is also
number
there.
one. Yeah,
Nick Cage doing a white Jamaican accent is not what we are about.
Rule, yeah, right. The whatever Small Giants rules, like the whole rules.
Yeah, right. Rule number 2. Rule number 1: it has to be non-narrative. Rule number 2: Nick Cage cannot do a Jamaican accent in any of the pieces he does.
Good enough.
Yeah, right. Take a picture of that. You put that on your Instagram.
Those are the 2 rules that everyone has to abide by.
What a great night.
Oh my gosh. Well, guys, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thanks for being on with us. And like I said, I'm looking forward to more conversations and potentially hanging out at some point in the near future.
Yeah, right. Great. Yeah. Well, we appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Well, that was a great conversation.
That was. Yeah, I mean, love micro moments. Micro moments is my new word. We're going to use that all the time. This is individual micro moments.
And, you can just never really... you never really can understand when Nick Cage is going to pop up in a conversation.
Well, he popped up in our conversations all the time, if you can't notice. If you like this conversation, we highly recommend our last transmedia conversation, who has a project, Christian Nome. We talked about Titan Effect. If you missed that one 2 weeks ago, you should definitely listen to that one.
But you know what, Frank? All the other 54 episodes of the podcast have been very good. So
yeah,
you can
absolutely.
Backtrack right now and listen to all of them.
Right. Thanks for watching and supporting us, guys.